D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The Titans, terrible, awful, no good, very bad week continues. We'll get more into the Chad Brinker conversation, or as I like to call him, the supreme ruler of football. But the Tennessee Titans have another big opening on their staff listing. It was reported earlier this morning by Andrew Marchand, who covers sports media for The Athletic. It has since been made official. Mike Keith, the legendary voice of the Tennessee Titans, is now the voice of the Volunteers. Mike Keith leaving the Tennessee Titans after nearly 3 decades, returning home to Knoxville, where he will call Tennessee Volunteers football and basketball games. And I think the two men sitting to my right would be able to have some great perspective on what this means. Willie Donick, of course, a veteran broadcaster in this city. Derek Mason, one of the greatest Tennessee Titans players of all time, if I do say so myself. And I think a lot of you would agree with me when I say that. What does the loss of Mike Keith mean to this organization? This is, in my opinion, a significant departure.
Yeah, it is. You know, I was listening, to the radio today, and it was put basically like this. He's been the one constant professional of excellence in that building. He's been the one constant, excellent professional in that building through the good, through the bad. You knew exactly what you were going to get from Mike Keith. You knew the voice was going to come out through the radio. You knew that he was going to, if you couldn't make it to the game, he was going to make sure he did what is necessary to make you feel as if you were there in the game. Did an excellent job. I didn't have a personal relationship with him. I didn't know him that well. Others did, but I did respect the way he went about his job. Listening to him on the radio when I couldn't watch, it was a joy. Not many people get an opportunity to grow up listening, their whole career, sort of life, almost listening to one voice for one team. And Titan fans, a lot of the day one fans, that's what they got for the last 25 years, half of, 50 or whatever. Or if you're 25, you're 50 now, like me. That was the voice. You got used to that voice. Hell or high water, Mike Keith was going to make sure that he did everything in his power to make you feel as if you were there to represent the Tennessee Titans in the best fashion, an excellent fashion. So to it's almost like, I don't want to say replace him, because you can't replace somebody like that. That's one of those. That's a guy that you look at and say, okay, he's a day one Hall of Famer. He's one of those day one guys that you put on your Ring of Honor. Today he said, I'm going to now be play-by-play for the Vols. Now his name should go up in the Ring of Honor today. That's how much I respect him for the work that he did for the Tennessee Titans. Because Willie knows, there were some tough years. And he had one of the greatest calls in all of football history, the Music City Miracle. And I think that's when he truly captured the city with his voice.
We just passed the 25-year anniversary.
Yeah.
By the way,
I didn't even realize that till today.
I did see you tweet us. You tweeted something about your personal experience.
In fact, Austin Huff, who runs that, who put it up there on his thing that he does. Austin was a day one 102.5 The Game guy, by the way, and went back as an intern before at our previous stop, came over with us here. He was the one that put the clip out there. That was good stuff. But so let's talk Mike for a second here. I agree with everything you said, Derek. He is a pro, and when he got that job, he got that job when it was the Tennessee Oilers and the
Yes.
transition. So he
Mhm.
went through all of the transition from, as the team got to Tennessee and they were the Oilers and they were playing in Memphis, all of that stuff. And he was doing that. He was not the original play-by-play guy that year. They had a guy that was sort of a stopgap between the old voices of the Houston Oilers. And then he graduated up when the team was the Titans. He was the play-by-play guy. So he did a fantastic job through that process. And then you think about all of the ebbs and flows of that,
Yes.
of the organization. They had some great teams, especially early. Then they had some dips. Then they had some good teams. So he has seen really bad Titans teams. He's seen really mediocre Titans teams. He's seen really good Titans teams.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think, as somebody who is with a team and broadcasting through the ups and downs, that's a challenge, right? Being able to stay professional, serve the team that you're broadcasting the right way, serve the fans the right way through the ups and the downs. That's a big challenge, and I thought he handled that part of it really well. And I also really admire his preparation for every game. I listened to his last broadcast because I was at Vancouver. I couldn't get the game on TV, so I was listening to him. That game meant nothing, right? That game was it's the end of a miserable year. Everybody just wants to get out of there. The weather's bad, but you could tell he had prepared for that game like he does for every game, right? He knew all the players. He was ready and gave you a good professional broadcast in that. So I first met him when he was at Tennessee and sort of the understudy, one of a couple understudies for the great legendary John Ward. And Bob Kessling was also on the team there. And Mike was doing the baseball games. And they had a heck of a team. R.A. Dickey and Todd Hilton and some of those guys. And I was doing the Vanderbilt games. And so that's when I first met Mike. So I've known him for a long time. So I don't know how people are going to perceive this from afar. I don't know if people think, well, he's bailing on the time. Why would you leave Nashville to go? But I do think he has a deep, deep love for University of Tennessee. Like I think he has always thought that would be a great job for him. But they went with Bob Kessling, who successfully navigated following the legend. Like we always realized whoever was going to follow John Ward as the voice of Tennessee, the voice of the Vols, that was going to be extremely difficult. But Bob Kessling did it pretty seamlessly for a long, long time. So I don't know all the particulars of, why Bob is moving on or why, how that job came open. But I would always thought, and I don't know Mike really, really well, but I think he will deeply, deeply love and appreciate that job. So I don't know that it's like, I want out of the Titans kind of thing. I haven't talked to Mike or anything, but I would suspect that he's loved his time here, but he's always deeply, deeply loved the idea of calling the University of Tennessee.
I see it like, it's sort of like this, I like to sort of compare or relate things to being a parent. It's like, okay, I got my child. I helped raise my child to that ripe old age, whatever it is. And I've spent so much time pouring into my child and making sure that I showed up each and every time, smile on my face, no matter the ups and downs, being that steady force. Now I feel my child is grown enough. Now I can kind of do some things I want to do now that I thought about, that I had an urge to do, like that I thought would be great, to be in a space where I loved as a kid. So now your kids are gone, they're grown, and he's like, okay, now y'all in a good place in the sense, from a broadcast standpoint, you're in a good place. Now let me go do that one thing that I really wanted to do for the longest, since I was a kid. Let me go and now be the voice for a school that I spent money, that I got my education, I've been a fan of since I was a little kid. Now I get an opportunity to have that job, to be there. That's the way it's supposed to be, isn't it? Like, that's the way, like, you help raise something to a point where you figure they're good. Now let me go do what I like, what I want to do, and enjoy it.
Josh on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com says, it's a sad day. I like Mike Keith so much that my text ringtone is Mike Keith with the touchdown Titans.
Or sad.
Right, that's the other one.
Right. So this was Tennessee Vice Chancellor and Director of Athletics Danny White in the news release about Mike Keith joining the university. When we discussed potential candidates, this is a quote, one name topped our list without question, bringing Mike and his family back to Rocky Top. He is a true icon in the broadcasting industry, and we are excited to harness Mike's exceptional skill set to further elevate both the Vol Network and Tennessee athletics in bold and innovative ways. The news release also says that not only will Mike Keith be the lead play-by-play announcer for the football program, but also men's basketball games. So Tennessee, the number one team in the country in basketball, although they did lose by 30 to Florida the other day. But they, we've seen what's going on with Tennessee football. It's on the rise. The Volunteers basketball team is on the rise. And this
baseball team.
So when does
baseball
he,
team
when
is
does
pretty
he
good too.
actually take over? Is it next season?
I assume it's immediately. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the basketball team.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what
it's
I'm
next
saying.
season.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. So one thing, and I think Josh's text about Mike Keith being his text ringtone, I think speaks well to this. Broadcasters are a vital part of your fandom. If you are a diehard fan of a team, you have such a connection with the people who call those games. Willie, you are a Mets fan. Gary Cohen, Ron Darling, Keith Hernandez. That is part of the
And
Mets
I would say Howie Rose on the
Howie
radio.
Rose.
Yeah.
That is an integral part of being a Mets
Integral.
fan.
Yes.
Predators fans, when the franchise came here in the late 90s, Pete Weber and Terry Crisp. That was a huge part.
Essential people in the foundation of the fan base. They didn't have any players. Remember the first 5 or 6 years, they had a group of the expansion rules for newer fans. It was so different back then, where Vegas and Seattle had the pick of a pretty decent group of players. As we found out, Vegas went to the Stanley Cup Finals their very first year. That was not anywhere in the cards. So what did you have? You had the personalities of Pete and Terry to sort of build that fan base, bring you into the mix, have you having fun while the team was growing very slowly.
Absolutely. And that's what Titans fans are feeling today about Mike Keith. Matt on our text line says, I am blown away by the Mike Keith news. Is this indicative of any earth-shattering behind-the-scenes changes with the Titans? Isn't this job change a potential downgrade for him? But we just touched on that.
Yeah, see, I
don't think it's a downgrade at
see,
all.
That's the thing. I don't think that's where it was coming from Mike. And I haven't talked to Mike, and he may never share that. I'm guessing that somebody will interview him somewhere, but that would be my prediction. Is that it's much more of
it's
a
not
love
a downgrade when you
Tennessee
love something
and not bailing on, because it's easy to say, well, Tennessee's red hot. All these sports they're on a high point right now. Whereas a few years ago, University of Tennessee was in a rough period. The probation and the Philip Fulmer and the president. There was some nutty things happening. They've got a lot of stability and they're winning a lot right now. And the Titans are down. So, but I really don't. I think he's probably viewed both jobs the same way throughout his whole up. He's been in Nashville now for 25 years, 28 years, whatever it is.
But that wouldn't some of this coincide potentially with his contract coming to an end? So it's an easy transition?
I don't know. The contractual part of it, exactly. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's leaving because he wants more money and all this other stuff, but he, just like anybody, if you stand and play, you want to finish it out. Just like players say, I would love to retire here because I started here, I finished here. Maybe his deal was, I just want to, I'm sort of honor the contract. So I'm not going to leave early. I'm going to honor the contract. And then once I do that, then I'm willing to take that next step in my life. It's not about this is not an upgrade in a sense to him, because this is a job that he's loved, or a downgrade, because I believe this is a job that he loved. So whatever he's doing it because he wants to do it. That's the way I feel.
Right. I imagine, let's use the example I just used. Willie Donick is a Nashville broadcasting institution on the radio, play-by-play for the Nashville Predators. But if the New York Mets called, and asked Willie Donick to replace Howie Rose, as much as Willie Donick loves Nashville, Tennessee, and the Nashville Predators and all of you, I could see him on the next flight to New York. Like that. So I imagine.
He would at least have to think about it.
I don't know if my wife Erin would come with me.
Yeah.
That would have to be something I would consider. But I would have to say,
That's about 75% of it right there.
The opportunity to work with Grimace every day would be
Who
overwhelming.
would pass that up?
Absolutely. Would be overwhelming for Willie. And I imagine that's what this situation was for Mike Keith. He loves the Tennessee Titans. We know that. You all know that. The opportunity to go back to Knoxville and be the voice of the Volunteers for as much as Mike Keith gave to the Titans organization, I imagine the pull was too strong to not go back to Knoxville. Paul on our text line nominates, because we're going to hear about this. Who should replace Mike Keith? It's going to be a tough spot for that person. I heard Chase McCabe on the Chase and Big Joe show nominate our friend Jonathan Hutton. I wish this would have happened yesterday so we could have asked Hutton about it, but maybe we'll ask him about it next week. But Chase nominated Jonathan Hutton. Paul on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, nominates Jarrett Stillman and Paul Kaharski to share the duties of the Titans call. Their tone and spirit of cooperation will meld perfectly with the state of the Titans.
The Stilly and Polly show.
The Stilly and Polly show every Sunday.
They wouldn't spend no time talking about the game.
They would argue.
Maybe insulting each other.
Arguing all the whole time. Hey, listen, you know what? You know who should love Mike Keith the most right now?
Who's that?
Who loves him the most right now? Who is just like, thank God?
Chad Brinker.
Absolutely. Chad Brinker is like, thank God, Mike. Thank you. Because now, who are we talking about?
Yeah.
We're talking about Mike
I'm
now.
sure it'll get back to
We'll
Chad
get back to
pretty
Brinker.
quick.
We're going to get back to Chad here in a few minutes.
I know. But what I'm saying is that at least there's some other big news, local big news out there in regards to the sporting world.
Well, let's put it this way. With all of the firestorm that's going on for them, and then this is happening, I don't know, but I have no idea behind the scenes how much buildup there was. As you mentioned, the contractual part of it. I don't know if Mike's contract was up and there was a long, hey, we want you to stay, or he went to them and say, this job is coming open. Bob Kessling's retiring. I'm interested. What do you think? I don't know what happened, but I do know this. That's an important job. As you chronicled, Derek, it is an important job, especially when a team is down. And so whoever the next person is going to be in unique shoes, and it better be the right person. And the Titans need to realize it needs to be the right person.
And the right person to work with Coach McGinnis, if indeed Coach McGinnis stays on board.
And with their head coach.
Exactly, yeah.
And with the general manager. Like
whoever that is.
There is a messaging part that goes with being the voice of a team. You have to call it like it is. There is a line, right? You have to be honest with the fans. When the team is not playing well, you have to say they're not playing well. But at the same time, you have to be in lockstep with how the team goes. Right, absolutely.
Dylan on our text line nominates George Plaster to be the voice of the Titans. If you have recommendations, you can text us and call us 615.
I don't think George can hold it in.
737-1025.
That is an interesting. George has definitely walked that line.
Yes.
He's had to walk that line when he was the voice of Vanderbilt, for sure. Hey, I'll say it. I think George, you could do a lot worse than George. George would do a heck of a job.
I'm not saying he wouldn't do a great job, but man, I could just see him like hold his tongue. I will not believe that George would not say something.
I can't do a George Plaster impression.
It would not be dull. Let me tell you.
Exactly.
People would listen. I can guarantee you that.
Steve is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. He has a recommendation for the new voice of the Tennessee Titans. Steve, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I'm not sure how much play-by-play he has, but I could almost 100% see Rhett Bryan taking his spot.
Thanks for the call, Steve.
Who did he say?
Rhett Bryan.
Well, this is again, what are you looking for? But radio play-by-play is a unique skill set. So, and I don't know what Red has done or not done with play-by-play. But I think that's job one, is you have to be able to call the game, right? You have to be a good play-by-play announcer. And usually at that level, you better have done a lot of games.
Yeah.
There's the whole theory of 10,000 hours, right? And Adam, and Derek,
You don't want to
too.
throw a newbie
You
in
guys
this job.
didn't groom yourselves, and neither did I, really.
Uh-huh.
I played for as long as I could play before I became an announcer. And George was really the one that said, okay, you think you could just walk in here and start yapping and everything's good? No, you need to learn the fundamentals, just like you learn the fundamentals of how to run a pass route, catch a ball. You got to put in reps and time into broadcasting like you do anything else. Adam, you are a writer. You've had to learn the skill set, and you've done an incredible job transitioning to what you're doing right now. That's not easy what you did. And so if you're going to be a play-by-play guy, maybe you could jump in there if you haven't done anything but a handful of games, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
Especially where the Titans are at now.
Oh, yes.
Especially where this team is at
There's
now.
so much more than
exactly.
But you have to have the mechanics of calling the game. Where is the ball? Who has the ball? What direction is the ball going? Where is the pass? Is it a first down? He's at the 30. He's at the 30. It's 4th and 9. Where is it? Did he get the first down? Did he not? There's all these details that they will carve you up on if you don't have those fundamentals. But there's also the tact, the vibe. What's the tone of how you call the game? Is the team struggling? How do I massage this? I thought the guy dogged it on that play in my mind. How do I say that? Right? The guy's mom's probably listening. Right, the player. So these are all the little things. Listen, you can't just throw somebody in there. You know what I mean?
Whatever Willie says, I am echoing because Willie sits in that seat and he understands it. So I can't add anything more to that than what Willie said.
615-737-1025. Some recommendations are rolling in on our text line. We'll take your calls as well at 615-737-1025. The news of the morning. Mike Keith, the legendary voice of the Tennessee Titans, the only voice of the Tennessee Titans, moving on to the University of Tennessee, where he will call football and basketball games for the Volunteers. Your reaction, 615-737-1025. Speaking of college football, the Game Nashville Sports Network is your home for the college football playoff, presented by Twin Peaks Empowerment Tractor and Equipment. Tonight, tune into 102.5, 106.3 The Game for the college football semifinal as Notre Dame faces Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Kickoff is at 6:30 p.m.
Hey, homeowners, time to start fresh here in 2025. Loan Pronto can help you take control of your finances by lowering your house payment and consolidating that nagging debt. 9 out of 10 borrowers get a better deal by calling Loan Pronto. They've done some of the most competitive offers for refis, debt consolidation, and purchase loans starting in the low 5s APR. So if your current rate is over 6%, don't settle. Even if you're in the process with another lender, you need to call Loan Pronto and see what they can do for you. Lock in a lower rate, close in as little as 2 weeks, often with no appraisal, and you can even skip your next 2 house payments. It's easy. It's hassle-free. Call Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. That's loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
Tune into 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders take on Kennesaw State at the Murphy Center. Tip-off is at 6:30 with the pregame beginning at 6. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, reacting to the major breaking news this morning. Mike Keith, legendary voice of the Tennessee Titans, moving on after nearly 3 decades with the organization, returning to Knoxville to become the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers. Your reaction, your recommendations for his replacement, 615-737-1025. Let's start with Kevin. Kevin is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kevin, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm putting in my 2 cents. I think you guys should get D. Mace and Chris Sanders to kind of fill the void for a while and give us some positivity. Put the 2 Forever Titans up there and do it.
Thanks, Kevin. Derek, your thoughts?
Would be it would be a train wreck with Paul and Stillman. Yeah, it would be Chris trying to be positive and me just saying, man, no, what I'm seeing is bad football. And
damn.
And I guess I would be off the air then. They wouldn't have me as their play-by-play person.
By the way, I just want to take this moment. Speaking of Chris Sanders, let's just take this moment to congratulate Chris Sanders on officially winning Silly Underdog Picks this season. It was in the bag for a while, but it's official. Chris Sanders.
It was a dominant performance.
A runaway winner of Silly Underdog
Who
Picks.
Who cares? Nobody cares.
You know what? But let's just also mention the rest.
Who cares?
Second place, me. Third place.
If you ain't first, you'll last.
Third place, Chase McCabe.
Yep.
Fourth place, Derek Mason. Willie, do you have the final tallies?
I do.
All right, let's just quickly go through this.
Hey, Willie, if you ain't first, you're what?
You're last.
Exactly.
Although I like
You're
to
the second place winner.
I like to paint the mental picture of the medal stand. Poor D Mace is not on the medal stand.
Oh, poor D Mace.
We have the gold, silver, bronze in a field of 4. And unfortunately, D Mace is not.
There's
on the
not
medal
like
stand.
a titanium medal.
I mean, I was thinking, is it tin?
We can give you a chocolate
Is it
medal.
copper? What would be 4th place? They don't give that medal out, unfortunately.
You know those fake chocolate gold medals that they give away? We can give you that, D Mace.
All right, I'll take it.
You know, I was writing this down, but because the game didn't matter, but Ole Miss did beat Duke in the bowl game,
I
right?
did
So
pick Ole
by a
Miss.
lot. Yeah.
by a lot. But
I did pick Ole
so
Miss.
Chris ended up with 79 points. 79 for the season.
With how many wins?
5.
That's not a record. 79 wins.
No, 79 points on 5 wins is
Yes,
pretty
yeah.
impressive.
Actually, he had 6 wins. So
Okay.
he had 82 points because UConn won. And so he had 6 wins and 82 points. But he had some big chunks.
He did.
The big chunks. And so he won by far. But yeah, your win, Adam, vaulted you into second with 41.5. Chase, thanks to David, actually won both of his bowl picks in the part 2 of the
I feel
bowl
like
draft.
I deserve an extra point for that.
I
Yeah,
feel
but
like the Jelly of the Month Club benefit raise would have to be in order from the suit for helping him out and finishing third at 39.5. And D Mace ended up at 29.5. And you had a chance. It came down to the last game, North Texas against Texas
Yes.
State. And North Texas was right in there. In fact, the quarterback for North, this guy, I was on my way to a game.
He threw a bad interception.
He did, but I got to give the guy credit. He went over and he puked in the trash can and
Yeah, he
went
did
back
do
out
that.
and threw a touchdown pass, or like had a 70-yard touchdown run. And a guy had a great tweet. He said, "You got to give this guy credit. He pulled off the puke and rally move."
Just like Cam Scadaboo,
Yes, Cam Scadaboo did it as well.
He
so.
puked and rallied. Yeah.
which, by the way, is the mission statement of Arizona State University.
Which
Puke and
also
rally.
some people, out in the frats at
Uh-huh.
times will try the puke and rally
Yeah.
move. Some successful, some not so successful.
Yeah.
A lot not successful.
Sometimes there's a puke, but the rally is very.
The rally may come the
I-
next
the
day.
rally is straight to bed.
I just wanted to take this moment to highlight the fact that Derek came in last. That was the whole point of this
Yeah,
aside.
whatever.
Let's get back to
From
Mike
first
Keith.
to last.
Yes, Bill from Clarksville is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bill, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
You guys always make the day so much better. I appreciate it.
Appreciate that,
Thank
Bill.
Hey, When they announced that Tennessee was going to change the announcer, Mike Keith was the first person that came to my mind. But the more I think about it, does Mike change the way he calls the game from the Titans to the Vols, or does he is Mike Keith, whether he's calling a Titans game or a Vols game? I'll let you guys comment on that. The other suggestion I might have, and I know this is probably not going to fly, but Willie, I think you would probably be a good choice to do the play-by-play for the Titans. I know you do a wonderful job for the Preds, but I don't know if they would come calling, but I think you've got the chops for that. So that's my 2 cents. You guys have a good one, and watch out for Snowmageddon tonight.
Yes, thank you, Bill. So
we're not letting Willie go anywhere.
No, we're not. But let's answer his question about how Mike Keith calls a game. I have to imagine that the same Mike Keith that has been calling Tennessee Titans games for nearly 3 decades is going to be the same Mike Keith that calls games for the Tennessee Volunteers football team. If you like the way he says sack, he's going to say the same thing calling the Volunteers getting a sack as he did with the Titans. But Willie, as the professional broadcaster, you went from radio to television. You mentioned this. There are some nuances in the radio versus the television, but I can't imagine there will be much difference in how Mike Keith calls Volunteers games as he did Titans games.
It's a great question for Mike, but my viewpoint would be he will call it exactly the same way. He learned from John Ward, who was the voice of the Vols. And the first thing you learn when you're studying from a guy on a guy like that, just like I learned a lot from Pete Weber and from George, you don't want to mimic that guy. Nobody could mimic John Ward. He is one of one, right? The way he called games. He was an absolute legend and unique beyond belief. So I think that's what you learn. You have to have your own style. And that's what Mike has. Mike has his own style. Nobody does the sack like Mike does, right? So I think he knows in his DNA what the Volunteer fans want to hear from their announcer. And so he's going to do it. So I think he's going to knock it out of the park. Like the caller is right on. Once Bob Kessling announced the retirement, I think there was a big gravitation towards, let's see if Mike, he was the logical first guy. Let's see if he's interested. So I think that was a no-brainer. And by the way, I will say I'm flattered that you would think that I'm qualified for the job. But let me just say, I am deeply, deeply entrenched in my current gig, want to keep that seat warm for the Preds. So I am all in on the Predators. But I certainly respect
sound like Deion Sanders.
I certainly respect the heck out of that job. That is a one of the highest ranking jobs going on in our city is the voice of the Titans for sure. But that being said, I am all in on the Preds.
That is one of it maybe some people don't look at it like that because of, what goes on, and not just in the world, but locally here. But I look at like the voice of a sports team, a professional sports team is sort of like, that man or woman you hear every night, talking about your city, describing your city, depicting your city. You get used to that voice. And when somebody talks about your city and they want to know something about your city, or they say, well, who can be the voice of your city? A lot of times people, because of, they've listened to this one voice for so long, it's like that person, I know that person on that channel, he gets the city. He understands the city. And I think sports announcers, especially guys like Mike Keith, yourself, Willie, you become so entrenched and important to the community because they listen to your voice about their particular team. And a lot of times you can sort of help people off the ledge from a sports sense, by the way you describe the game and how the way you talk about the team. Yeah, you're going to talk about the bad, but the way that you as well as Mike talk about the respective professional teams here. Y'all keep a lot of people upbeat when a lot of things are going wrong with the team.
Here's another part that I think is important that I think Mike will bring to the table for Tennessee. I think when you're the voice of the team, the fans need to know that your soul is in it with them, right? And this is, again, the distinction. This is a nuanced discussion, right? And so get your brain there, right? This is not black and white. And this is the sweet spot you want to hit. The fans need to know that your soul is in it with them in the ups and downs, that you're representing the fans, the ups and downs. You're not lying to the fans, right? You're not a homer per se. Homer to me is a bad term. You don't want to be a homer. There are homers out there. Your soul is in it, but you're being honest with them. That's the sweet spot. There's no doubt in my mind when you say, is Mike's call going to be the same for Tennessee? His soul is in it from day one. He's not going to be the outsider coming in like, hey, let me ingratiate myself to the ball shot. He's already there, right? He's got that.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and texts on Mike Keith leaving the Tennessee Titans for the Tennessee Volunteers. 615-737-1025. Hey, Preds fans, don't miss Smashville Live tonight at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. Max Hers, Hal Gill, player guests Mark Jankowski, and Colton Sissons. That is Smashville Live tonight at 6 at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue.
All right. Let's tell you about Lee Company, proud sponsor of Nashville Predators hockey. The journey continues on Saturday, a little break in the schedule as Nashville regroups for a 5-game homestand. Saturday night, Alex Ovechkin and crew coming to town, the Capitals. Radio coverage starts at 6 p.m. with Max Hurst and the pregame show, and it will be brought to you by Lee Company. Hey, it's cold out there. Our heating unit was tested. Lee Company helped us put in a brand new system in our house over the summer, and it is working really well right now. Thank goodness, because it's going to get even colder. But that's a comforting feeling, and Lee Company can help you with your heating system, also your electrical system, your plumbing, and, of course, when it starts getting warm, the air conditioning system. So it's great to have that relationship with them. But even if you just are in a pinch or you need a maintenance job, call 615-567-1000 or go to leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. They'll take care of you. Lee Company, in business since 1944 in our listening area. Proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, talking the news of the morning. Mike Keith leaving the Tennessee Titans to join the University of Tennessee. Marvin is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Marvin, thank you for calling. Please go ahead. Marvin, are you there?
Hey, Marv.
Marvin, call back. Eric is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com.
Yeah, what happened to Marvin?
I don't know what happened to Marvin. Apparently, Marvin had a George Plaster impression. Eric, do you have one?
No, unfortunately, I do not.
That's all right. But please go ahead, Eric.
Hey, guys, first of all, I'm real happy for Mike Keith. You normally wouldn't think a guy would leave the pros to go to college, but if that's his dream job, hey, more power to it. I'm happy for him because it's probably all the ties he has. Guys, I'm going to throw out a name. I don't know if this has been suggested or not. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. And I don't know if the Tennessee Titans would consider this individual. And if they did, do you think he would seriously consider taking the job? And that's Kevin Ingram. What about him? Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Guys, I'll get off. Y'all take care. Talk to you again soon and stay safe in the snow.
Thanks, Eric.
Eric, you can speak on that.
Let me tell you, I have thought of Kevin for sure. Now, Kevin, selfishly for me, because in Vancouver, it is not a great place to watch college sports. So I was listening to Kevin and Tim Thompson call Vanderbilt's win at LSU, and I was texting them throughout the game. I was like, it's 1 degree where I am. I actually was in Calgary. And so I was saying, I'm listening, guys. I'm in it. But Kevin does a fantastic job. Kevin is really, really good. And he's a guy that I think has made a great transition from – he didn't go to Vanderbilt, right? Just like his predecessor, Joe Fisher. Joe didn't go to Vanderbilt, but became a really good connected voice with the fans for them. And I think Kevin has done that really, really well. And his mechanics are really, really good calling basketball, and I think he could easily do football as well. They got Andrew Allegretti. They kind of share the duties, and Andrew is a pro as well he's getting more and more attached to the audience now these days too. So I don't know all of that for sure, but I think that the Titans would be wise to consider Kevin. I don't know if the Titans will just say, hey, the job's open. Who wants it? And just take whoever sends the because that's all you would have to do, and you would have hundreds and hundreds of people throwing their name into the ring because that's a coveted job. There's only 32 of those jobs in the world. That's what you realize is when that job comes open, how coveted that job. I realized that when I was sort of transitioning into my current role with the Predators is you sit there and you go, man, there are people that would literally give their right arm to do what you do. All of the minor leaguers. Let's take another guy. Jeff Hem does a great job for the Sounds. He is a great broadcaster. That's not a super high-profile job, but you talk about a job that you got to be ready for every night, 150 games or whatever he calls for the Sounds every year. He is a tremendous broadcaster. He could do it as well. To me, if I'm the Titans, Kevin and Jeff are both guys that would be on my radar, but they haven't asked me who I would look. But those would be two that I would suggest if they did ask me. So they wouldn't have to do any work for a lot of really good broadcasters to come to them and say, I would like this job, but who's the right person? That's I hope they take the time and energy to really pick through all of these things.
Bart, who I misspoke, referred to as Marvin. That's why he didn't answer the phone. Bart is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com.
He was like, who the hell is Marvin?
Bart, I'm sorry. Thank you for calling back. Please
And
go
Marvin,
ahead.
if you're out there, you can call too. You're welcome.
Marvin can call as well. But Bart, thank you for calling back. I'm
my
sorry.
goodness.
Please go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm not sure who Bart or Marvin is. This is actually George Plaster. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
Gentlemen, we have a job search, don't we? So your old buddy George was just driving around this morning, and I heard you guys mention my name. And I thought to myself, well, this Titans play-by-play job, the search is about to get spicy. But I thought to myself, well, I don't know, maybe. But I'll tell you this, your old buddy George, if the price is right, I'll call as many Titans games as you want me to. How about that, gentlemen?
Thank you,
Not bad.
George.
Thank you, George,
Not bad.
Marvin.
Not bad.
Willie, let me
not
get your
the-
grade. Let me
not-
get your grade.
Not
on
the
that.
best I've ever heard, but not the worst.
It could have
was
been a
pretty
little
solid.
bit slower.
And one of the best, we'll meld a couple things together. Kevin Ingram probably has done the best George Plaster that I've ever heard. I've heard a lot of people do a good one. Bart's was not bad. That was pretty good.
That was a young version of George.
And I will say this too about George, and this is all serious. George calls a great play-by-play on the radio for football. So that's another guy that if you really wanted to spice it up, I think that's another guy that absolutely from a professional job standpoint, the mechanics, and this I'm biased because I learned from him. He would nail it. There's no doubt about it.
Doug is in Nashville. I'm making sure I actually call Doug by his actual name. Doug is in Nashville on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Doug, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning, man. Great announcement on the anniversary of the Music City Miracle, which I had a blessing to attend. But the thing is, since Mike Keith has put himself in the portal and got picked up by the big orange, do you keep Coach Mack? Is the question. Do you pair him with someone else, or do you go with a whole new combination?
Thanks for the call, Doug. I appreciate that. Look, it's like the conversation we've been having about the general manager position.
Yes.
Should they clean house? Well, they obviously didn't, but before it happened, should they clean house? Should they start fresh? No, Dave McGinnis has also been an institution on Titans radio. So I have to imagine that if Dave McGinnis wants to stay in that position, he will. And I think it would be good for someone new to be partnered with someone who knows the ropes like Dave McGinnis.
Yeah, I mean, Coach McGinnis does an excellent job. And he and Mike work well together on air. And I'm sure it was the same way off air as well, but I'm just talking primarily on air. Those two guys fed off each other well. Obviously, Coach McGinnis knows football forward and backwards, up and down. So whoever they choose to hire, I'm sure from a contractual standpoint, his contract, Coach McGinnis, is not up. So you just can't say, oh, since Mike is leaving, you're gone too. Well, they can, but you still would have to pay him. I would think, they would pair him up, because this is a decision, I'm sure, that the Titans knew about behind the scenes. They had to have known about the potential of Mike taking the job in Knoxville. So they probably had some time, but you never know with this organization. You don't know what the hell is going on sometimes. But I would love to think in this situation.
So this was in November that Bob Kessling, they announced, that was released that November 7th that he was going to retire.
But I think even before
if the Titans
that,
were smart, and this is, again, if the Titans were smart, that should have been on their radar on November 7th. As soon as that day happened, hey, I wonder where Mike's headed. And all of the stuff.
But kudos to Mike, too, because when that happens, you got to know that you may be the next guy that is calling games for the Vols, but all the while knowing that, still doing your job as if you're going to be the guy moving forward no matter what.
There's a loyalty that I'm sure Mike felt to the Titans as well. And what we don't know is all of the contract stuff, because there are things, and there are probably situations, and not just broadcasting, but other things. If you may be under contract, Derek, but I could be your boss and say, Derek, look, I know this is something that really means a lot to you. I will let you out of this contract so you can pursue this. That's the right thing to do. That I don't know if that comes into this as well, but that has to be considered.
Hair Metal Henry suggests that the Titans should hire Kevin Ingram to call games using George Plaster's voice.
Elite.
If he could pull that off, boy, that is.
Oh, he could do it.
That is the wizardry at its finest for the whole thing. Like, don't change your voice at all.
The element, though, of mixing with Coach McGinnis is something to consider as well.
How many partners have you had on the radio and on the broadcast? You worked with Stu Grimson. You've worked with Chris Mason, obviously. Was Hal with you on the radio? Or
I've done a few games with Hal for sure as a fill-in. I've done some games with Crispy as a fill-in. I've done a couple of games with Jay Moore and JP Dumont. So you definitely adjust. You definitely have to make your analyst. Part of the job of the play-by-play guy is to tee up your analyst, make him feel comfortable. What you can't know really is the chemistry, right? Is there natural chemistry? You can develop chemistry. I think the best announcers can adapt to whoever they're partnered with. Those are the best, but not everybody can do it. Like the instant chemistry between Pete Weber and Terry Crisp was very apparent, right? That was a special duo that you couldn't have known. They had never worked together before, but the very first season, you knew that was a fun duo that was going to be hard. That you can't just predict that you're going to have that. So I'm assuming Coach McInnes is going to stay on. He does a really good job. He's a fun personality. He's got a little Terry Crisp to him, personable, down to earth, but still giving you really good analysis. So they have to be thinking about that. Who's a good match for him?
We have a lot of suggestions on our text line for Jared. We know that Jared loves the Titans. If you listen to him, you might not think that sometimes, but he does, in fact, love the Titans. By the way, the final question on Jared versus Joe yesterday by Caroline. And by the way, we should congratulate Caroline Fenton on her engagement. I don't know if you saw this or not.
Yes,
I did.
Caroline Fenton engaged. Congratulations to Caroline. Caroline's final question to Jared and Joe yesterday was, should Jackson Reese Stillman, Jared's newborn son, be a Titans fan? And Jared said, Grandpa and Dad have been through a lot of crap as Titans fans, but I think the thing with Jared is I know how much he loves the Titans. Something tells me that he would have to remove the word sucks from his vocabulary, and I'm not sure he would be physically capable of doing that.
But he's never done any play-by-play.
He hasn't.
He is a talk show. That's a different skill set.
Yes.
So, number one, I don't know if Jared. I've never asked Jared really. Did he ever try to do play-by-play?
It's a good question.
Coming up through the ranks when he was learning the broadcasting skills. I don't know the answer to that, but I know he's never done a game, has he? At any high level. He may have done some USN games, University School, where my kids went to. Proud alum of that. I don't know.
I'm just imagining Jared sitting next to Dave McGinnis calling a Titans game, and the Titans give up a sack, and Jared will turn to Dave McGinnis and say, Coach, have I ever told you the right tackle story?
I think Dave McGinnis will stop him right there.
615-737-1025. All this Titans talk, and understandably so. We do have some college football bowl games to play. Starting tonight, Notre Dame and Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Mitch Light, college football editor of The Athletic, will join us. We will preview the semifinals of the college football playoff. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The college football playoff continues tonight. Notre Dame, Penn State in the Orange Bowl. You can hear that on this station starting at 6:30. And to discuss the college football playoff, college football editor from The Athletic, Mitch Light, joins us on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mitch, I want to start with Notre Dame because after they lost in week 2 to Northern Illinois, they were 28.5-point favorites in that game. I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of forgot about Notre Dame for a while. And the way they've been playing since then, and especially in the college football playoff, has been incredibly impressive. How has Notre Dame been able to brush off that horrendous loss early in the season and get to this point in the college football playoff?
Yeah, it's been very impressive. And I credit Marcus Freeman, the staff, Riley Leonard. But even in the weeks after that game, there's still a lot of noise around Notre Dame. You know, Riley Leonard threw 2 interceptions that game. He really wasn't playing well mid-season. There's a lot of rumblings, boosters, in the NIL area. What are we paying this guy for? Mad at the staff for their evaluation, basically 2 years in a row, bringing in a transfer that at this point didn't really pan out. But they just, not to be cliche and all that, they just kind of stayed the course. And they just, their statistics from after that Northern Illinois game through the rest of the regular season, I believe they led the nation in total offense and total defense from that point on. Now, they didn't play the most difficult schedule, but they took care of business. They were just consistently strong, and they just kind of closed all the noise and just took – and, people like us doubted them, said there's no way they can make the playoff with that blemish on their schedule, and they did it, and they've been very good throughout. They've been very opportunistic in the Georgia game, especially. But, yeah, all credit to Marcus Freeman and that staff.
So his counterpart in the Orange Bowl, James Franklin, coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions, I thought I'm just setting it up. I'm just setting it up. Either way, James Franklin had a little bit of a jab at Marcus Freeman talking about Notre Dame's independent status, because Franklin said that he thinks a larger CFP ultimately requires more uniformity around college football. He said, I think everybody should be in a conference. I think everybody should play a conference championship game, or nobody should play a conference championship game. I think everybody should play the same number of conference games. Now, Notre Dame, their independent status is, central to its identity. Sure. What do you make of Franklin's quip there?
I think James Franklin should coach his own team, worry about his own team, and it's not prevented. When has Notre Dame ever prevented Penn State from accomplishing anything? If it were, I can't even think of a scenario where 2 years in a row Penn State didn't get into a 12-team field because Notre Dame, being an independent and didn't play a conference championship game, didn't. I agree it's kind of weird that the way things are structured, but college football's always been weird. It's sort of the charm of it. It's the absurdity of it with the huge conferences and the realignment. But for the most part, you got some leagues had 12 teams. ACC for a while had 8 teams, then 9 teams. You got some independents. So I think it's part of the charm. I can understand James Franklin's point. It seemed to be weird at this time when his team is finally kind of broken through, is in the spotlight, for him to come off sounding a little bitter about it. Maybe I'm misreading it, but worry about your own team.
Mitch, I think what he was trying, I think part of his thing was, at least how I understood people explaining it afterwards, he's talking about the split that has to be done with conferences in regards to the monies. Notre Dame doesn't have to split with anybody because they're not in a conference. And what Franklin is saying is, okay, we got to split the money with the Big Ten. Texas got to split the money with the SEC, but the $14 million that Notre Dame gets, they don't get to split it with anyone. They get to take that money and then use it on their NIL. And I get it, and I understand that part. But I think that's what he was more so a part of what he was alluding to, that people do agree. That's why, other coaches, maybe not now, but this has been a talk with Notre Dame since I was in college about them joining a conference.
Yeah, I get that. That's fair. I understand that. But again, it just, if it was more prevalent, and I'm not saying Notre Dame deserves special treatment, if there were 3 Notre Dames out there and more independents getting more percentage of the money, like, I just think it's just the timing again is weird, because he's finally broken through and should be celebrating his team's achievements. And I like James Franklin. Obviously, he's a very good coach. He's done very well at both stops. To me, and now from the outside looking in, he just always seems to be so concerned what his program doesn't have rather than what it does have. Like, Penn State is one of the great programs in college football. Unbelievable fan base. And everything, but it's just always RNIL this, RNIL this. Just always seems to be so concerned, again, what his program doesn't have, and, rather than appreciating what they do have.
It is part of what makes him unique and successful, because I can remember, and Mitch, you can as well, his drive. Like, I think David Williams, granted him the indoor practice facility that had been lacking for years and years that he wanted. And I thought it was amusing, and I think David Williams did too, was they had barely, said, Coach Franklin, we're going to give you the indoor practice. Okay, but what's next? He was like, don't you know we're still so far behind everybody else? He that's what drives him, though, that it's never. I agree 100% with what you're saying there, Mitch. And I also think it's funny. He thinks everybody should play the same amount of conference games. He was fighting to keep 8 conference games when he was with Vanderbilt, because he knew that gave them a better pathway to scheduling the way he wanted to make sure that they got wins and could build the program. And I bought the argument a lot, but I think it's interesting that these different places, different times, you can change your views.
No doubt. And I mean, coaches should always be looking out for themselves in their program. I mean, you can go back and find a college basketball coach who's in the ACC. Oh, the ACC is the best league. It's the best league, hardest venues, and then goes to the SEC or the Big 12. It's by far the best league and all that stuff. Like, I'm not picking on Buzz Williams. I have no idea, but I was just thinking about him earlier because I watched Texas A&M last night. I bet when he was at Marquette, Big East, best league in the country. ACC, best league in the country. SEC, best league in the country. So you're going to promote your own league, your own team, and I don't blame them for that type of stuff.
Now, of the 4 remaining head coaches, who do you think, and this is not about, firing. It just has nothing to do with if they don't win, they will be on a hot seat. I don't think if any one of these guys lose, I don't think then they're on a hot seat. I think all of them got their program at a place where they're going to continue to win for years to come. But in saying that, which coach do you believe is sort of, it's one of those deals where you're going to have to win moving forward, or else, the fan base may be on you just a tad bit. So who has more to lose in a sense between these 4 coaches?
I'm going to turn it around a little bit. I think Ryan Day has the most to gain.
Okay.
Like, basically the same point. It's like, I think because of losing to Michigan all those years in a row and how bad that was this year, sure, they love these last 2 games. They've been great against Tennessee and Oregon. But if they lose in this game, there's going to be a portion of that fan base, that won't forget what happened against Michigan, won't forget the failures to win a national championship. So I think Ryan Day still has the most pressure on him to win. I think every coach we're at the top of the sport here. All these guys have a ton of pressure. I would put Sark on the bottom end of that. As far as I just think he's done such a great job shedding so much baggage with that program at Texas that we saw in the last 10, 15 years, how they couldn't break through to go to the playoff 2 years in a row. So obviously it'd be great for all these coaches' careers, job security, all that, to win. But I put Ryan Day as the most to gain, and then I put Sark on the other end of that spectrum.
Not to mention Ohio State and Day, they do have the highest payroll now that Oregon is out. They do have the highest payroll in college football.
They're also a victim of this recent success too. Yeah. It's like I think as fans of any sport, whatever sport, our team, we want to see our team play to its best potential. And you understand if you're, whatever your situation is. That's the frustration of Ohio State fans. They knew how good this roster was, and then you see how good they played, how well they played the last 2 weeks, and you're like, Why are we not playing that well every week? Why can we not do that against Michigan? So I think it's also like he has to win now even more because they showed how good they can be at their best.
Mitch Light, college football editor for The Athletic. Mitch, speaking of Texas, interesting storyline, and this is just a natural progression of all of the NIL stuff, but you had a lot of these whispers of the minute Texas loses, there's going to be a huge push. Hey, do you want to go into the portal? We'll pay you huge money. We know Arch Manning is on the rise for Texas, and I thought he handled himself pretty well in the game against Arizona State, but I just wonder how that affects a kid with trying to win a championship when you kind of know this is out there. And we're talking about, I think you guys reported or other people, $6 million or something like that has been floating out there.
Yeah, we didn't report that. We were just a little more, I guess, conservative with throwing out NIL dollars because it's so hard to confirm and verify. Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, that Quinn Ewers has a great head on his shoulders. He's a mature kid. When you are the number one recruit in the country in your class, and for a while he had a perfect score in the composite rankings of 1.00. Like there's only been 4 of those all time. Like I don't think he ended up there, but point being, he has been a big name in recruiting circles and college football circles since his freshman, sophomore year in high school. Goes to Ohio State, goes to Texas, so he is used to the spotlight. That being said, I don't know how it doesn't affect you when you're deciding. He's thinking about his future, and he needs to decide quickly after this game. He's going to come back to Texas. He's going to go to the NFL draft, or is he going to go in the portal? And there have been conversations. I know that with other, not saying he has, but with other schools. It's not; these aren't just rumors. So, again, like you said, he played well against Arizona State. I thought he played very, very well. He's doing it with the most famous backup quarterback. Looking over his shoulder there. So I would expect him to play well. I don't think it'll really affect, but if he doesn't play well, will people throw this out there? I don't know. But it's, as you mentioned, it's kind of a sign of the times.
Ohio State, they played at such a high level in these 2 games. I always wonder how that's going to affect the next game, because when I watched Ohio State a few times during the season, they didn't look anywhere near that loose and that sharp. But wow, is it fair to say that Ohio State can hit a level that these other 3 teams may not be able to?
No, it's very fair. It's accurate. And I think you made a good point there, Willie, about being loose. Like Ohio State's almost like a professional team. Like there's business, just not saying they don't have fun playing football. I've made this case about Ohio State a lot of times. It's like the expectations are so high at Ohio State. Like no one's happy unless they win 50-10 every week. And I know there's some SEC schools like that too, but it's just Ohio State, which has been the top dog in the Big Ten. It just seems a little bit different. It's like they don't always look like they're having fun. So credit to Ryan Day, who was facing so much pressure after the Michigan game, for getting his team to play loose. And Will Howard had an up and down season. He's having fun playing really well. So I think that's probably a key to it. They are playing, I'm not saying by no stretch does Ohio State have house money because their expectations are so high, but they're just playing with a different looseness, whatever, like the term you use. So yeah, when they're at their best, they're a team without a weakness. You could say the offensive line because of the injuries they've had, but they seem to have sorted that out. So, they have the highest ceiling of the 4 teams, no doubt about it.
I want to ask you your perspective on the Vanderbilt season. I can remember Adam asking you the question before the Virginia Tech game, the week of the Virginia Tech game. And we were all
6, right, with a bowl win, I think.
Yes, that is correct.
We're going to go back and look at the tape. I think I said that.
I'm not sure that that's the case, but you have asked it. You have asked to check the tape before, so we can probably accommodate you there. But I remember Adam asking, and it was purely an unknown. And I think your answer was reflected that as well. I would be the first to tell you, after what happened last season, I had zero expectations. I didn't know what to think. But to think that they were going to have the season they did, I could not have dreamed, honestly. I hoped for it, but I can't. I don't think you can say enough about how they turned that around. I realize that in today's athletic world, if you change your team over, you can make a pretty radical change, as we're learning. But at the same time, at Vanderbilt in this league, where there were so many comments being made of, does Vanderbilt even want to be in this league anymore? Do they even want to do this? to have that year was really, really special. But maybe if you could put sort of a summary on it.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, the only thing I would say is in sports, you just never know, obviously. I mean, there's just turnarounds all the time that are unexpected. But the way last season ended, not just, we've seen some poor Vanderbilt teams, but if you look at the margins of defeat last year and just the body language, and Clark Lee has talked a lot about this year, the body language last year, specifically the Kentucky game, and how the program and that staff, how they just sort of reinvented the way they go about it, from a developmental program to recruiting and develop to hitting the portal hard. And they obviously struck gold at the quarterback position and with the coaching staff changes they made. So, very, very surprised. And it's just like you throw out this word culture all the time. It's overused, but it's important. That's my concern with every team that is very portal heavy, is the culture. Because you can bring in 20 guys. Let's say you bring in 20 guys. 18, 19 can be great, fit your program, fit your identity, but you bring one guy in who doesn't, can disrupt the locker room. And we've seen that. I think that happened at Florida State to some degree. So, yeah, tons of credit for Vanderbilt. And, I think they've done a really good job this offseason. I think Gunnar Hansen, the left tackle, is really the only guy that they lost through the portal that you'd say, yes, would definitely have been a starter last year. They still have some holes to fill. I'm sure they'll be active in the spring there. But, all the credit to Clark Lee and that staff.
Now, looking at Alabama, Mitch, they had their right guard transfer. They have two linebackers that transferred. Now, the right guard, he wasn't the best, but he had been a starter for this Tide team who was bad across the board from an offensive line standpoint. Are we going to see sort of like what we're seeing with Florida State, where guys are leaving in droves because they don't see the program improving? I'm not saying that Alabama is going to, go in the dumpsters or anything else, but this isn't the Alabama team that we're used to seeing. They fired their defensive coordinator, not too long ago. Yep. What we saw on the product on the field wasn't a reminiscent of what we're used to. Are we going to continue? I know they got some guys in, but are we going to continue to see guys choose to leave Alabama because it's not the Alabama that they got recruited to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I know it's just a bowl game and you don't want to put too much stock, but for a program that had very few opt-outs, I was disappointed in their bowl game performance against Michigan too. I'm a Kalen DeBoer believer. He is a great coach. He has been a great coach. Coaching at Alabama is a different animal, as we all know. The one thing I'll say is they recruited extremely well. So there's a lot of incoming talent. It's not like I'd be a lot more concerned about the future is if their recruiting took several steps back. I'd say they took a half a step back because you're going to do that when Nick Saban leaves, but they still signed the top 2 or 3 class. Without knowing all of the reasons for the departures, you hear some of it's NIL, some of it, some of them a lot of programs, a starter could leave, and we on the outside, we could be like, ooh, that's a big loss. But maybe the staff said, hey, you might be a better fit somewhere else. I'm not making excuses for anyone. We just don't know. But it's clear Alabama is now just another SEC program. They are not Alabama on top of the SEC looking down on anyone. I think next year is going to be a really interesting season for them, again, because their talent level will be good as always, but they don't have the top talent across the board. I mentioned quarterback is going to be interesting. They got this guy, Keelan Russell, coming in, a true freshman from Texas, from Duncanville State Power there, by some accounts, the National Player of the Year. Well, he started as a freshman, so there's some answers at the most important position there. But Kalen DeBoer's pretty much always had a really good offense. But I agree with you. It will be one of the more intriguing programs to watch next year.
Mitch Light, college football editor from The Athletic, joining us previewing the college football playoff. Mitch, as always, great stuff. Enjoy the games upcoming.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Mitch Light joining us on the program. You can hear the Orange Bowl here on 102.5, 106.3. The game kickoff is at 6:30, 615-737-1025. We've gone this long without talking about the supreme ruler of football, Chad Brinker. Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports had some interesting comments about Chad Brinker and some of the things going on behind the scenes with the Tennessee Titans. We will play those comments coming up next. Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3. The game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 in the game.
Supreme ruler.
The Imperial March.
One of my faves.
That can only mean one thing. It's time to talk.
Is that Chad Brinker?
Chad Brinker's in the house.
It's time to talk.
Can I
about
tell you one thing about this? I am a Star Wars nerd. I will admit that the newer stuff, I wasn't as enthusiastic, but you give me some trivia on the first 3 movies, I can score very high. I can score very high on the 3 movies. But I took my son when he was real little, it's probably just a little bit older than Arlo is now, it was the symphony coming in and playing in the arena all the Star Wars music.
Yes.
Right. And they played with they had the movies in the background going a little bit, but the music was live. They played the soundtrack basically. It was really fun. And they had a lot of the characters walking around the concourse and stuff. My son enjoyed it. Then they played the Imperial March, of course. They actually had the guy who played C-3PO in person standing up there, and he was kind of your guide through the night. And so the concert was just about over, and all the main songs had been played that we know. Getting ready to leave, and he goes, "Would you guys like to hear the Imperial March one more time?" And the whole crowd was like, "Yeah!" So that was the encore. That brought the house down. Like, as much as the main theme is so well known, the Imperial March might be the best piece, arguably, right? That could be the debate, right? What's better?
It reminds me of, shocker, a moment from The Simpsons. Who was the band that sang "Taking Care of Business"? Was that
Bachman Turner Overdrive? Is that right?
Turner Overdrive. And Homer is at a concert where Bachman Turner Overdrive is playing, and they say, "Now we're going to play a song from our new album." And Homer screams, no new talking, no new crap, taking care of business now. And then they start getting
365.
Just keep playing it. That's all we want to hear.
And then they start playing "Taking Care of Business." So I understand you got to play the hits.
Yeah, that is a bummer when a group that's been around wants to play all of their new songs.
We don't want to hear the new
I
stuff.
get it. Mix them in, but you got to play the favorites too. You got to do it.
You go to see Toto. You're not hearing the new. You don't want to hear the new song from Toto. Africa. Just play Africa for an hour, as far as I know.
Rosanna. Yeah,
right, exactly. Anyway, Chad Brinker. Chad Brinker, as we know, the supreme ruler of football for the Tennessee Titans. He has total roster control. We haven't talked about a lot of these general manager candidates, and we're seeing a lot of reporting about who the Titans are going to be interviewing for general manager. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know a lot of them. I did see Terry McCormick yesterday report that Thomas Dimitroff, the former general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, who was the general manager of the Falcons team that lost in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, he is interviewing for the job, and that's a name I do know. But we talked about this yesterday and the day before. Whoever the new GM turns out to be, doesn't sound like they're going to have a whole bunch of authority. So,
but see, this is, and we're going to play the clip. I thought Charles had some really compelling, thought-provoking stuff, right? Whether you agree with everything or part of it, it was very interesting perspective, which we're going to play. But I think the number one thing that we need to debunk is that who would be interested in that job? There's only 32 of them. There will be a lot of people interested in that job. A lot of people. Even if you have your questions and doubts, it is such a coveted position. You will have a lot of people. Now, choosing the right person, that's a whole nother story. And are you getting the best of the best coming in there?
That's what Adam said yesterday.
I don't know, but you're going to get a lot of people that have some talent that want that job.
So Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports, he joins Robbie and Rexroad every Thursday morning. And of course, the topic of conversation is what happened with the Titans earlier this week when they fired Rand Carthon and gave Chad Brinker even more power. And one thing that Charles Robinson said, and this is something we knew, that Amy Adams-Strunk is not present in the Titans offices very much. And one thing that Charles emphasized was when an owner isn't present, you do have to demonstrate your value to the owner as much as you possibly can, because he or she is not there overseeing you every single day and seeing all of the things that you're doing. So that led to a conversation about what Chad Brinker was able to do to get Amy Adams Strunk's ear and ultimately get promoted even further, up the ladder, so to speak. So this was Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports on Robbie and Rexroad this morning.
The most influential person in an organization underneath an owner is someone who can do many things. That is very impressive to owners. And Chad Brinker, through no fault of his own, has an extremely wide base of experience. Extremely wide. Like one of the most varied bases of experience of almost any NFL executive that really you can find. I mean, look, 8 years in scouting, 3 years in cap, 2 years in football ops. He's got analytics under his belt. I mean, he's a Nexus guy. He is someone who can sit in the middle and talk knowledgeably and smartly to Amy about almost anything in the operation. So what happens is Amy starts to look at Chad Brinker and go, this guy's really useful. And I need someone who can, I have a president of operation, and my president of operation, Burke Nihill, but he's more of he's business minded. Like this is the business guy. He's going to set up the business end of this. We've got that taken care of. What I need is an individual who can come in and lend structure to the football side. I need somebody who can basically put it all in order. Analytics, cap, scouting, like I need all these things, football ops, they all have to work together. And I need somebody who can do that. Now, the question you can ask is, why did she choose Chad and not Rand? I can't speak to that other than the fact that when you look at the experience between the two, the one with the far more varied resume and the one who was steeped in a number of things in a successful organization, doing, like I said, that multitude of, and they were real years. I mean, 3 real years working in cap, 8 real years grinding and scouting, like all these different things. Chad brought a lot to the table. And I think ultimately that's how Chad ended up in that position. And also I will tell you, be very careful about assuming that Chad was pitching himself to get that job. I have seen in organizations, and I can't say this is exactly what happened in Tennessee, but I have seen in organizations where owners will spend time with people in that executive suite, and next thing you will know, the next offseason, they will approach that individual and say, hey, look, I think you can do more here. I think there's a bigger role for you here. This is what I have in mind. And then it's incumbent upon that person to go, okay, like I'm now going to climb over some other people in the organization, and I have to understand how I feel about that, and I'm willing to do that. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened in Tennessee, but I am just telling you, do not discount the ability of Chad Brinker to speak authoritatively on a number of different things and how that probably impacted Amy, who, again, I cannot stress this enough, is not there on a very constant, consistent basis.
That was Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports this morning on Robbie and Rexroad. A lot there.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing is clear in listening to Charles Robinson. Chad Brinker made himself indispensable to Amy Adams Strunk. And perhaps it certainly sounds like the fact that Amy Adams Strunk is an absentee owner in the sense that she is not in the office every single day. That can help a certain someone sway, get a certain amount of sway.
It's the game you have to play.
Yes.
And I've talked about it when you were playing,
Mm-hmm.
D. Mace, the dynamic of Bud Adams being in Houston. The team was in Tennessee. It was all new.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Floyd Reese, Jeff Fisher, and later Jeff Diamond all had to play the game of how is our owner, who everything revolves around, absorbing information. Who is he getting information from? You have to get in on that game if you want to survive. And I do think that there is some parallel there.
I like to keep things simple, straightforward and simple. Okay. Y'all can discuss it how you want to. And it was great the way Charles put it all together. And you're right. If you go back and listen to it, because it is a good listen, whether you agree with them or not. I didn't agree all the way with them with some things, and I did text Joe. Joe this morning.
I was abused. My phone started buzzing a lot.
You're part of the,
and I enjoyed the
mine
exchange.
as well.
Yeah. And but I just sort of disagree with sort of how he was, going around a particular question, not necessarily whether Brinker did this or not. It had nothing to do really with Brinker. It had more so to do with how the organization sort of put together this new structure, based on Josina Anderson's report and others' report. So that was mainly for the organization. But I like to keep things simple. And I know our listening audience love to just keep things simple. Okay. Essentially, what he's explaining is this, like, okay, I am going to make sure if I want, and I may not be overtly saying, I want your job, Adam. I want your job, Adam. I don't want your job, Adam. But I'm not
I don't
just
blame
saying,
you.
just saying, I want your job, Adam. I know how to do it without saying I want his job. I know how to make sure I place myself strategically in places where I know that I can talk to Amy one-on-one by myself. Now, Rand chose not to do that. That's his fault. But I'm not going to say, hey, Amy, I want Rand's job. What I'm going to say is, hey, listen, this is what we can do. This is how we can get better, yada, yada. I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you from my expertise how this thing should go. Not saying we adding Rand and Brian into the mix when I'm talking to Amy. It's more so of I would do it like this, or I would say it like this, or Amy, this is how the analytics part works. Because that's the one thing that I think he truly has over Rand and he had over John is the analytics part. He spent Charles Robinson said, he spent 2 full years, the analytics and the salary cap part of it. He spent 2 whole years. They made sure, Green Bay made sure he had that knowledge that he needed. Well, while he was doing that, Rand was scouting and John was running the team. So they didn't have that 2 years to just immerse themselves into analytics and stuff like that. Maybe they should have, but they're just probably thinking about it from a, what do we think a GM's job is? The main thing is the main thing with the GMs. Get the talent, identify the talent, acquire the talent, and then help that talent reach its maximum potential, which is on the coaches. They're thinking about it from that standpoint. Well, Brinkert is coming at it from another angle. He's coming at it from, I'm hitting her with the analytical stuff. She's heard a lot about developing and all that stuff. I'm gonna hit her with the analytical part hard. Why? Because she don't really understand it. She don't understand it the way I understand it. So when I talk to you, I'm sitting here with my arms crossed, like,
Yeah.
that's
Sounds
interesting.
fancy.
Exactly.
And look, it
And
is the wave. It is the wave of sports
Exactly.
today. It is the modern way that that organizations do it. You have a team of you
That's
have
why when they say
infrastructure.
that's why when they said that the title has changed, he's right. The title has changed, and it's changed in his favor.
And he sold her on that.
Yeah, exactly. Which
and I think too, we can't discount John Robinson was kind of old school. He was more like you were saying, let's keep it simple. Do we think this guy's good? Yeah, let's sign him. Right. He was not as much into the analytics.
And maybe Vrabel wasn't either.
But Vrabel, I do think, told Amy on the way out, we need a better system here. We need and I think Brinker was like, I could put it in that system. I've gone through the Northwestern graduate program. I've been a scout and I've been a cap person. Like he does have, as Robinson pointed out, a very diverse skill set. And I think he was able to articulate and put the vision that, and Amy was like, well, Mike Vrabel did say we need more. I do think he was the guy that said, I put in this infrastructure. I can put this in. So it would be wise for her to say, well, we just started this. I'm buying what you're selling. Let's keep going with it. Now, where Rand was squeezed out in that whole process, that's what we don't really know. But I think it's fair. Amy Adams does latch on. I'm all in on Mike Vrabel. Wait a minute. I'm not all in on Mike Vrabel.
No,
I'm all in on John Robinson. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not out. A.J. Brown, just had I'm out on John Robinson. That could happen to Chad Brinker down the road. But right now, Chad Brinker is the hot hand, right? He has her ear.
615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to Charles Robinson's comments on Chad Brinker from the Robbie and Rex Road program earlier this morning, 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball. The Commodores will take on Ole Miss with a 6:30 tip-off, and the pregame show will begin at 6:15. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and 94.9thefan.com. Vanderbilt women's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball, coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium February 5th through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets.
Hey, happy Thursday. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you set out to lose some weight, chances are it's not the first time setting a resolution or a goal. I like to call them goals to shed extra pounds only to come up short. At Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at coolspringsmd.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game. Anytime I can hear, damn, it feels good to be a gangsta.
I was going to say, is this Office Space?
It is indeed Office Space. A great tune.
It's a good movie, too.
We'll have Elliotte Friedman of Sportsnet coming up in the next segment. Some Predators news to pass along. Steven Stamkos did not practice today for maintenance. He left the game the other night with an undisclosed injury, but he did not practice today. Luke Evangelista, however, is out for 4 weeks with a lower body injury. Luke Evangelista suffered that injury against the Jets the other night. He is out for 4 weeks with a lower body injury. Steven Stamkos out today from practice for maintenance reasons, but no status for Saturday against the Capitals. But we'll talk to Elliotte
And
Friedman.
they will get Zach LaRue off of the suspended list.
Mhm.
So that would be a logical replacement in the short term for Evangelista. But we'll get to that when the time comes.
Yes, Elliotte Friedman in the next segment. Bob is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bob, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, y'all are talking about general manager. You know, we got a Tennessean young man that was born and raised in Tennessee, played at UT Martin, went into scouting, went to New York Giants, and won 2 Super Bowls eventually as their general manager. And he's living in the Middle Tennessee area. Probably wouldn't even have to relocate. Jerry Reese.
Thanks for the call, Bob. I didn't hear who he said.
I didn't hear. Did he say Terry Reese?
I think he said Terry. Yeah,
Crease?
Crease. I think is what he said.
I don't.
I wish I
haven't
could
heard
tell you.
that.
Maybe I didn't hear him right.
Yeah,
I
it
was
sounded
not
like he
familiar with
said
that.
Bob, if you're
Terry
listening,
Reese.
text us who you were saying, and
Terry
we'll discuss.
Reese or
It was hard to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
I see
who
all
he
of
was.
these. I see all of these names.
Mhm.
There have been many reported names for the Titans GM search in terms of who is interviewing for those positions. And
It's Jerry Reese.
Jerry Reese.
Jerry Reese.
Jerry Reese.
Yes.
Okay.
And who is Jerry Reese?
Jerry Reese was the
not related
GM.
to Floyd.
Yeah, not related to Floyd.
But he was with the Giants for a long time.
Yeah,
Jerry
he
Reese,
was the reason they won.
Yeah.
He was part of the 2011 Super Bowl team.
Okay.
So here are some of the names. that have
And
been-
he has a lot of accolades for sure. I don't know how old Jerry Reese is now. It seems like he's been around for a long time, but I don't know all the particulars there.
So here are some of the names that have been reported for interviews. With
Jerry
the
Reese is 61 years old.
Okay.
With the Tennessee Titans. Mike Borgonzi, Chiefs Assistant General Manager. Catherine Hickman, Browns Assistant General Manager. Glenn Cook, Browns Assistant General Manager. Terrence Gray, Bills Director of Player Personnel. Ed Dodds, Colts Assistant General Manager. John Spytek, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Buccaneers Assistant General Manager. Terry McCormick yesterday reported that Thomas Dimitroff, the former General Manager of the Atlanta Falcons, will interview for the job as well. But with everything going on with Chad Brinker, as I said before, a lot of these names I am unfamiliar with because I don't know the ins and outs of every other NFL organization. But the most likeliest scenario is that the person that takes this job is an up-and-comer looking for that boost in job title. Willie, as you said yesterday, you may have the responsibilities of more of an assistant general manager, but your job title will say so-and-so general manager. And that comes with, that comes with something, it's a promotion. But I'm having a hard time getting invested in this GM search, knowing where Chad Brinker sits in all of this. Is that strange?
No.
Well, see, it depends on how much you want to take a dynamic from afar and speculate or even talk to people. And then, because none of us that are covering this really know unless you're in there day to day. You can, even if you're asking people and they're giving you feedback. Jared yesterday a lot. I thought he had a very compelling show yesterday, and he would refer every 3 seconds to my sources. I don't know who the sources are. I have not considered Jared over the years to be an investigative reporter, right? He's not a writer from a journalistic side, training wise, but I know enough about the sports talk show is plenty of people can influence a sports talk show host by bringing them perspective, right? It just depends on what you want to do with that perspective. I have plenty of people that I bounce things off to try to get a perspective of what's going on when I'm not there. You can't be everywhere, right? As a sports talk show host, that's why we talk about Stephen A. Smith. He can't be at all 32 teams and all 4 major sports and all the college. You can't know what's going on. You have to rely on people to bring you what you hope is accurate perspective. So I'm not going to go too far with the soap opera, the backstabbing and the lying or whatever Jared wants to take with it. I would say this, though. I am most curious about what Charles Robinson hit on the dynamic in the, what do you call it? The executive suite, right? Because here's what I think we do know. Brinker was, I shouldn't say no, but I can see this as being a plausible thing. That Chad Brinker had some time around Amy Adams to sell this vision of more modern, more analytic, more layers, having everybody communicate better. That sounds like a vision that an owner who doesn't go in there every day would want, right? That sounds good. That's what I want. Now, is she in there every day to oversee it? Does she have the background to manage? Has she been a CEO? No, she's just the owner of a team that inherited a team that wants it to be successful for her family's, heritage, all that. It's important to her that way. But you got to have the right people in place. Brinker seems to have sold her on that. The other dynamic I'm curious about is, this gets back to Adam, your thing about titles. It was brought to my attention, not just on Jared's show, but he mentioned this, and other people have said this as well. There's a person on the staff named Bryce Wasserman who has the title on the Titans website. I'm looking at it right now. Chief of Staff, Football Operations. Now, there is a really generic title that sounds important, right? Chief of Staff. I could say Chief of Staff. You could say I'm the GM. I'm the Chief of Staff. They both sound pretty fancy from afar, but we have no idea from the outside what that means for either one of us. But you and I on the inside know what's on. But I would imagine Brosman, who according to what has been said by Jared, is engaged to Amy Adams Strunk's daughter, I believe. So he is in there, and I believe he's a lawyer, if I'm told correctly. But either way, he's the chief of staff. He's probably around Amy Adams Strunk and has a unique relationship there. So Chad Brinker around there. How does all of that work? I ask the question all the time, going back years. Who does Amy Adams Strunk confide in to make the big decisions, to say, okay, who knows what they're doing over there? So these are the people I wonder what that atmosphere in the executive suite is that Charles Robinson was talking about. And he was speculating that Chad Brinker, who has a very diverse background with a unique skill set that are very legitimate credentials, how that could be very appealing sounding. What I'm not going to do is speculate on that I know any of the answers to these questions, but I am really curious about that dynamic there, knowing what the track record of Amy Adams Strunk has been.
This, as you are talking, Willie, this reminds me of Any Given Sunday. When Al Pacino, it was like the daughter was getting in the ear of the owner, and Al Pacino was a longtime coach, and she was smoothing up, making sure she got what she wanted, like in an overt, not an overt way, but kind of like it's like, okay, we're going to make sure I get what I want. Now, I'm not trying to take your job, but I am trying to make sure I have the power. And it was like, okay, you got this coach that has been there for a long time. Now you got this sort of new person who's, I believe she was the owner's daughter, that's now trying to position herself in such a way to have power over you. This just seems like a movie. How you're explaining it, positioning yourself to make sure you get close to the chief of staff, which we all know the chief of staff is the person that is speaking for, sort of like the owner, president, whatever. They are the one that's tasked to bring the information to everybody. Well, in football sense, the chief of staff doesn't come out and talk to everybody. We know the GM does that, or the president, but essentially that's what it is. You're so close to the owner that I don't need to get to the owner necessarily. Only thing I have to do is get to you as the chief of staff. And buddy, it could be a good friendship, but I understand that my friendship can directly affect my positioning on this team. It's simple. It is completely simple. You and listen, whether he backstabbed Rand or not, I just think the way all this stuff went, it's just sleazy. It does seem like backstabbing. But however it went down, he positioned himself perfect, because once he got the ear supposedly coming from Jared, once he got the ear of Bryce Wasserman, now he has the ear of Amy.
Right. And I'd love to tell you what Bryce Wasserman's
if that is
background
indeed the
is,
case.
but on the website, when I click on biography, there is no biography. And that's the thing about a lot of these people on the staff. They don't have a very organized website that tells you the background of these guys. So I don't know exactly Bryce Wasserman's background and where he came from and what he brings to the table from his experience. But it does seem logical that he would be in this mix of people who have Amy's ear and help her shape her vision of what's going forward, what decisions to make.
615-737-1025. Elliotte Friedman of Sportsnet will join us next to discuss the NHL at Nashville Predators. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, Derek Mason had to step out. I know that will upset our next guest, Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet NHL insider, co-host of the 32 Thoughts podcast, author of the 32 Thoughts column. And by the way, Elliotte, your segment is now sponsored by Old National Bank. Get old. That is not a reflection of you at all, but that is your new sponsor. Elliotte Friedman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm just Googling it right now. Thank you to the great people at Old National Bank. But wait a sec, I have it in my contract that I don't have to appear if Derek's not there.
Derek, do you want to make a quick appearance just so that
just shout.
Just shout.
Just shout a question or something, Derek. Up.
Oh, he
Wait,
bailed. Oh, that's okay. Well, hold on. He's coming around.
What's going on?
Hey,
There we go.
Derek,
I have
here if
filled
you're not on. What
the
is this?
requirements of the contract now.
Okay.
He made-
Thank you.
he made
Derek,
his
I
appearance.
listened to your rant about the Titans this week. That was epic. Very
Oh.
well done.
There's a lot
That's
lot
awesome.
going on with the Tennessee
Oh,
Titans,
boy, yes.
Elliotte. But
Yes,
we're glad to get a bit of a palate cleanser with you.
So because I click on your links from quite a bit, I listen to Barry and I listen to some of the other stuff. I get like my For You tab. I get a lot of your clips on there because I guess the algorithm knows that I like your station. So like one of the first ones I got this week was the rant, and I said, oh, this is good stuff. Like this is the good stuff that we sign up for. It was interesting.
Yes, there has been no shortage of conversation as it relates to the Tennessee Titans. But let's turn our attention to the Nashville Predators. They're back home after a long road trip, mostly through Canada. They lost 4 of 6 on that trip, completing the trip with a loss in Winnipeg the other night. I know that we spend a lot of time this season talking about the future of the Predators and what moves Barry Trotz could make. And there's one name that pops out to me when thinking about players who could be on their way out of Nashville, and that's Gus Nyquist. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's been traded at the deadline, I believe, 2 other times in his NHL career, having a rough season, had a career year last year, recently snapped, what was it, Willie, an 18-game goal drought in
Right.
Vancouver.
He's got more empty net goals than goals into the net this year. He's a very good shooter from long range, but he has not been the threat and consistent scoring force that he was last year.
I do wonder, Elliotte, Gus Nyquist does in terms of the archetype. He fits the mold of a lot of what teams are looking for around the trade deadline. Do you see Gus Nyquist generating a lot of interest as we near the trade deadline? Not too long from now, a couple months.
I do. I like the thing is, like nobody would have predicted that this year would have gone this way for him. There's no question about that. I think one thing that will be very interesting is he is about to play in a bunch of games that are going to be meaningful. And I know some people in Predator land will roll their eyes at that because they'll say our games right now are supposed to be meaningful. And I don't want to discount that. But I have no doubt that he's going to be looking to put on a good show, too, at the Four Nations. I was a bit surprised he made that roster. I didn't know that he would based on the year he was having. But, you know, we get another opportunity to show something at an elite level tournament where there's going to be a ton of great players. I think that could be good for him. But, you know, I think people know what Nyquist can do. Like, you'll remember the last big contract he signed it after a time where he'd been battling some injuries and hadn't performed at his best. So I think that people know how good he can be. They have respect for his ability. And while I don't think the price would be enormous, I do think there would be interest in him. Absolutely.
One thing, to your point, Elliotte, the Predators are playing a lot of teams that are expected to be in the mix in the postseason coming up. They're playing Washington, they're playing Vegas, they're playing Minnesota. So a lot of teams that could be interested. Speaking of the Four Nations face-off, which is about a month from now, do you think that break in the middle of February could serve as sort of an artificial trade deadline? Do you think that we could see a lot of action in the trade market leading into that week and a half, 2-week break next month?
Well, I don't know if I would say a lot, but I think you're on to something. I do believe that there are some teams out there who are going to look at it as this is a team that they're going to look at it as we don't want to risk anything happening to a player that we might want to deal. And the one that a lot of people talk about is John Tavares from the 2014 Winter Olympics. He went to Sochi and won a gold medal with Canada, but he broke his leg in that tournament. And I remember how angry the Islanders were because it really hurt them. And, you know, what can you do? Players compete. This stuff happens. But I do think that there are some teams who are going to look at that and say, if we can make the move beforehand, we will do it. I think the one thing also, too, that's really could help you guys, Adam, is look at the Eastern Conference. Like 2 days ago, there was the worst team in the East was Buffalo, and they were 6 points out of the playoffs. The spread is much deeper in the West. Like Lou Lamoriello held a media conference or a brief media briefing, I guess, today because he was updating the Islanders reporters on some injuries, and they asked him about Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, both of whom are unrestricted free agents, and he basically said, why would we trade them? We're still in the race. So I think that because there is some separation between Nashville and the rest of the pack, and not only Nashville, but a couple other teams that are down there, I think those teams may have the advantage of saying, if we get in front of it first, we might be able to make some moves. Now, I will tell you, despite the road trip you mentioned, some of the people who were covering them or talking to the Predators during that trip were saying, you know, Nashville has not given up hope that they can catch that wild card spot this year. Now, there's a big difference in points. They've also played more games. Now, this was before they played Winnipeg, I should say. They're back. They've played more games. And the other thing that's a real problem is that there's a lot of teams between them. And with the loser point being as it is in the NHL, it's really difficult to leapfrog all those teams unless you go on an absolutely incredible tear. But I did think it was noticeable that the Predators were kind of talking about we're not out of this yet, as opposed to it's time to start selling.
Yes, Barry Trotz echoed that. He said, I'd like to watch it for another month or so. I guess what he's probably referring to is the time between now and the break where you have the Four Nations face-off happening. He said, we'll have a clearer picture. Now, even though he knows the odds, I think it's depending on what website, analytics site you look at, 3-4%. But Elliotte, I guess it does hinge on, like when we talked before Christmas and Nashville had a pretty good homestand going into the break. And you're saying, okay, it's starting to look a little bit better here, but they're still so deep in the hole. They're going to have to rip off a ton of games. I think one of the things that discouraged me was I was looking at the 8 teams in the spots, and Vancouver was one of those. And I was thinking, well, who's gonna implode? But the thing about it is Vancouver has been very tumultuous, to say the least, over these, since we last talked, right? And Nashville's gone in there and beaten them again. So do you think Vancouver will recover? Because that's the team that probably has the pieces to be in there. But now you've got Luongo issues. You got the infighting. You had injuries to Hughes. They're dealing with a lot of stuff there.
Yes, they are. But I think that one of the things that kind of has happened here, and I was looking at it today, is they still got, despite everything that's happened to them, Willie, they've still got a 575 points percentage. It's not like they've been awful. Like I was doing my daily radio hit in Toronto in Canada today, and I was saying that the way we talk about them right now, you think they were in 40th place in a 32-team league, and they're still got a 575 points percentage. Like that's pretty good. And they're, as you said, they're really banged up. They're going through a lot of stuff right now. And ultimately, I think they're going to sort it out. But nothing I've seen from them so far indicates that they are in a mood to fold. Like sometimes you see teams just hit the end of the road in a particular season and they just don't have anything left. I don't see that from the Canucks. They're fighting, they're scrapping. They played really hard last night. They lost in overtime on a total defensive breakdown against a really good team. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not going really well for them right now in terms of the drama, but Willie, they're hanging on. Like they're really fighting.
They are. They are finding ways, even if they're picking up an overtime point. Kevin Lankinen, by the way, has a lot to do with that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he's played great. Yeah, he's played really well. I've been very curious to see what's going to happen here because Lankinen has earned a raise in some security, and I'm curious to see if Vancouver's going to give it to him.
I want to ask one more interesting one about the Four Nations because, as you said, I'm sure every GM has their own take on what they're hoping for from the tournament. And for example, UC Saros will be playing for Team Finland in there, and that's a great opportunity for him. But you're also looking at UC Saros as a Predator fan and saying, wow, he's already got the biggest workload or as big a workload as anybody the last 3 or 4 years. Does he really need to be playing these extra games? That's a concern. And what's it going to look like afterwards? But the one that really got my attention, and as you know, Elliotte, the Predators went through Canada, so I got a lot of Canadian perspective watching the shows, watching the coverage of the World Juniors and everything. And one thing that came up was the Austin Matthews situation. Unique thing, because I'm sure there's hockey fans who are going to root for Team USA. You have a superstar American player in the biggest Canadian market playing for Team USA in the Four Nations, and he's got an injury issue that basically we don't know what it is, but it sounds like it's not going to heal itself. But there are people asking the question up there, what are his loyalties to the Maple Leafs? Should he even play in this if he's fighting an injury?
Well, I think the thing is, I do think this has been a conversation, and the one thing that Matthews has really tried to say is that, or so the Leafs and the people around him say, is it's too early to talk about this, and that's never going to work. We live in a hot take world, and people have their hot takes. Generally, I think like Lou Lamoriello has a great saying, and I steal it all the time. It's if you have time, use it. And this is one situation where you have time. I thought it was really interesting that considering all of the discourse around it and the situation, Matthews picked a back-to-back to come back on. Like it's Saturday. So last Saturday, the Maple Leafs played Boston, and on Sunday they had another game at home against Philadelphia. And he came out in the morning and he said, I'm playing tonight and I plan on playing tomorrow. Like we all thought maybe he was going to dip a toe back in the water, Willie, and let's just try it out. And now I'm more convinced than anything that his mind frame was, I'm coming back and I'm coming back. I'm coming back to play and I'm coming back to show I'm ready. And I think he's got 7 points in the 3 games he's played since he came back. He clearly saw what was going on around him and he wanted to end the discourse. And for now, he has done so. Now, he had a quote last week that kind of set everybody ablaze. He said, I'm not sure it's going to get much better this year. And that one had everybody saying, uh-oh. But the fact is, if he plays like he's played this week, there's going to be no debate or no conversation about it. He's going to play.
Elliotte Friedman joining us on D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Elliotte, before we let you go, I have to give a shout out to our fellow Southern state, Florida. It was announced by the NHL that there will be 2 outdoor games next season in Florida. We have Boston and Tampa Bay at Raymond James Stadium in the Stadium Series game, and a Winter Classic between the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers at, I believe it's Lone Depot Park, where the Miami Marlins play.
Adam, just do what I do, where the Marlins play.
Okay.
That way you just don't have to worry about the names. Yes.
Fair enough. But we know the success that the Lightning and Panthers organizations have had over the past several years, multiple Stanley Cup championships between them. I'm curious from your perspective, what the explosion of success of hockey in Florida, has meant to the NHL?
Well, first of all, I think, as you said, Adam, I think they deserve it. And, when the NHL went to places like Florida and Nashville, initially I was one of those snobby Canadians who was like, they're daring take our game there. What a joke. But with time, I've learned that was a stupid perspective to have, and that the more people who get into hockey and get interested in hockey, the better off we all are. You want your sport to be bigger. I'm not one of those please like my sport guys, but I love the game, and I think that as many people as possible should be able to experience it. And I think what's happened is that some of these places have become really great for the sport. Like your market, your city, your state has become great for hockey. We love coming. I can't tell you how many Canadians I know want to go down and see games in Nashville. And I think the same thing is the case in Florida. And, you can talk about tax advantages all you want, but, Florida didn't become really successful until they ran a consistently good organization. So I think what this does is it not only rewards the markets and the fans, and I do believe every fan base should be allowed to have an outdoor game in their area. They should be able to experience it because they're fun, but it's also a reward for a strong organization. And look, Tampa's now won 3 Stanley Cups. Florida, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions. You earn it. And I think the other thing too is this year it proved, as special as Wrigley is, it had low television ratings. I think that this event is more for the people who are there as opposed to the TV, but you have to give people something interesting. And I really hope, people are like, what's an outdoor game in Florida? First of all, it's going to be covered. So if there's rain, they can cover it up. But secondly, I hope they lean into it and create something fun that people tune in on and say, that's cool. That's different. That's what I want to see here. As special as Wrigley is, I'm a huge baseball fan. They've done it before, and the TV audience didn't find it different. So what is the NHL going to do next year in Florida to make it interesting? And that's the challenge, and I want to see what they can come up with.
Elliotte, as we look ahead to Saturday, and we kind of monitor the Predators for the next few weeks, as we get closer to the trade deadline, I think you're going to hear a lot of talk about what to do, what not to do. But in the meantime, you've got Alex Ovechkin coming in on Saturday.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a pretty special thing to watch, I think, for history purposes, because I'm amazed at how well he's played this year. Maybe you can help put perspective on that for maybe some of our listeners that might be going to the game that haven't really paid close attention, just how well he's playing and what he's on track to do here.
Well, okay, that's a great question. I'm 54 years old. I've watched hockey all my life. I was about 20. I was in my 20s when Wayne Gretzky broke the goal scoring record, and I was 29 when he finished his career with 894 goals. And basically, that's like when Hank Aaron retired and he had 755 home runs, nobody thought anyone was going to get there. Like, we thought that was unattainable. And we thought the goal scoring mark of 894 was unattainable, particularly since goals really started to go down in the NHL. It became a much more defensive league. Scouting got better than ever. It was much easier access to access other teams' games. We went through what we called the dead puck era. And all of a sudden, this guy Ovechkin comes along, and if you adjust his stats based on the era he played in, he really does go down as the greatest goal scorer ever. But I'll tell you a story. At the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, I did a sit down with Ovechkin, and one of my co-hosts, David Amber, said, you have to ask him if he thinks he can break Gretzky's record. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, I think he can do it. If he plays long enough, he can do it. And at the beginning, I thought, Dave, you're nuts. But I didn't have any other great questions to ask. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm not joking with you guys. I asked him this, and he looked at me like I was insane. He said, it's not possible, basically. He just said it's not going to happen. So not only did we not think it was possible, but he didn't think it was possible. And the fact that he's got a chance to break it this year, like he's on pace to do it in the middle of March, it's as big and as unlikely as it was for Barry Bonds to break Hank Aaron's record. I don't think anyone saw it coming, and then all of a sudden it happened. Right now, I don't think anyone saw this coming, and all of a sudden there's a good chance it's going to happen, if not this year, then next.
Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet's NHL Insider, presented by Old National Bank. Elliotte, despite the fact that you allegedly were a snobby Canadian at one point looking down on us Southern hockey markets, we'll allow you on Broadway anytime you'd like.
Thanks very much. I love to come down there, and I'd hate to be banned.
This I don't know.
Larry Davis.
I was about to say, I don't know if you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. This is not Mocha Joe's. We will not ban you. We don't want you to we don't want you to start a spike team in Nashville just so that you can come down here. But
I'll incorporate a city right next to it.
Elliotte Friedman joining us on the program. Elliotte, always a pleasure. Talk next week. Elliotte Friedman.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'll see you later.
All right. Elliotte Friedman joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans next. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan here with you. Always a pleasure to talk with Elliotte Friedman. If you missed it earlier, I saw this note from Alex Daugherty of the Tennessee, and the Predators are back in action on Saturday against the Washington Capitals. Luke Evangelista out for 4 weeks with a lower body injury. He left the game against the Jets on Tuesday. Steven Stamkos, who also left the game against the Jets on Tuesday, did not practice today, but no updates. So we'll see if Steven Stamkos is available when Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals come to town. Dylan from Antioch has been waiting patiently on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Dylan, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you. One of my friends texted me about the departure of Mike Keith and said this is 104.5 officially announcing their death. I mean, they've been dead for a long time, but I never looked at it from that angle. But he's absolutely right. He said the only reason I would ever listen to that station is for Mike Keith. So do you guys, in this, Chase, if you're listening, do you guys think you can get the Titans games? Seriously, serious question. I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Dylan. That is way above my pay grade. Thank you for being a devoted listener. That is way above my pay grade.
I agree. It's not in my pay grade, but I just understanding the dynamics of the situation. I think one of the things that our station has been built on, 102.5 The Game, and this is me speaking as a person that worked over there prior to that for a long time, had a great successful run before I came over here. I've now been here longer than I was over there, which is crazy to think. One of the things that has made the foundation of the creation of 102.5 The Game is the commitment from the game to the Predators, and the commitment reciprocated from the Predators to the game. That is a very, very strong bond. And I think for that reason, I can't answer the question, but I can speculate enough to say that I don't think you can. I don't think I would look for that anytime soon, because I'll give you some history. There was a time when I was over there, and he mentioned the station, our competitor, where we did try to squeeze in. I say we because I was over there at the time. We did try to squeeze in Tennessee, not Tennessee, sorry, the Tennessee Titans and the Predators, and it was difficult to do it all. There's only so many things you could put on one station. It's evolved since then, but one of the things I think the Predators really appreciate about the game is the commitment to put every game on this station when it's on. They are the top dog, and I think that is an important thing for our station and for the Predators. So I wouldn't look for that anytime soon.
We do have a statement from Amy Adams Strunk regarding the departure of Mike Keith.
Okay.
He will be immediately inducted into the Titans Ring of Honor without delay.
Cool.
From Amy Adams Strunk. Few individuals have had as profound an impact on the Tennessee Titans as Mike Keith. From the moment we announced our relocation to Tennessee, Mike became more than just a broadcaster. He became the voice that welcomed an entire state to our team. With his passion, professionalism, and unmistakable energy, Mike introduced countless Tennesseans to who we are, starting with those first pregame moments on Tennessee stations that carried our games. Mike's contributions extend far beyond the booth. We'll continue. Well, there's a lot here, so we'll just get to the end. With immense gratitude, it is my honor to announce that Mike Keith will forever remain the original voice of the Titans and will be immediately inducted into the Titans Ring of Honor. His legacy is not just in the accolades, but in the hearts of millions who fell in love with this team thanks to him. So that is from Amy Adams Strunk. A very impressive, impressive honor for Mike Keith. Adam is in Portland on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say the Preds need to be good, because the Titans are giving me nothing. They are ripping my freaking heart out. Mike Keith, dude, I just heard this. Good for him. It's going to be, it's an awesome opportunity for him. But, my God, if you can't keep Mike Keith, he loved the Titans more than anybody. He loves them more than me, man. He loves them more than all of us. You can't keep him, dude. It's spiraling in the wrong direction. Maybe it's just because Knoxville brought more opportunity. But God, dude, the Titans had nothing. We're legit starting over. There should be job applications on Indeed for everywhere that's not a player with that place. It's insane. And we should all apply. We should make it better.
Thanks for calling, Adam.
I think that's the optics of it that we mentioned this earlier in the show when we were discussing this, when the news was pretty fresh, Adam, that, it's easy, I think, from the outside to perceive that, hey, Tennessee's hot. They got a top-ranked basketball team. They got a football team that's gone to the playoffs. They've got a national title in baseball. Like, they're hot right now. And the Titans are not. But I think that's a coincidence, really, as to just knowing Mike as long as I knew him when he was there before. He was raised, for people that don't know, he went to Battleground Academy. Like, he grew up in Middle Tennessee, right? So he's from here, not Knoxville. But he had strong ties as an understudy to the legend, John Ward, the late, great John Ward. So I think he's always had a deep, deep love for that school and that job. And it just came open in November. I think that's really where it lies. It's not like, hey, Mike Keith was looking to get out because the Titans were down. I don't think that had anything to do with it, really. And that press release probably ought to tell you something, that it doesn't seem like this is Mike broke our heart, he left us. I think Amy Adams said this is a dream job for Mike Keith. I appreciate that, but let's also appreciate the generation of radio calls that he had for the first quarter century of top-level professional football here in our city.
And as we said earlier, fans identify with broadcasters just as much as the teams those broadcasters work for. I mentioned Gary Cohn and Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez with the New York Mets, Willie's beloved New York Mets. We mentioned, of course, Pete Weber and Terry Crisp with the Predators. It's going to be very strange hearing Titans games without Mike Keith's voice. A very interesting news nugget just crossed my timeline in the world of college football. Georgia quarterback Carson Beck is expected to enter the transfer portal. Multiple sources tell On3 the two-time national champion immediately becomes the top quarterback in the transfer portal. Beck previously announced his plans to enter the 2025 NFL draft, but will instead enter college football's free agency.
I think that is the modern college football game that is being played right now, especially for quarterbacks. Because, and I heard Kirk Herbstreit in the garbage time of the Oregon-Ohio State blowout talking about Oregon's quarterback. And what's his name?
Dylan Gabriel?
Dylan Gabriel last year, I think, sat there and said, okay, am I ready for the pros? I want to play in the NFL. Got a draft grade that wasn't real good. I think it was something like he'll be a free agent pickup. He won't be drafted. So he said, okay, do I want to be an NFL free agent or maybe be a 6th or 7th round pick if I really impress? Or do I want to come back to college football, make a lot of money, and have a chance to play for a national title? I think that is probably where Carson Beck is. He's got a serious arm injury that would probably affect his draft status for this coming year, right? That would have to be a big question mark. How's his arm? When is he going to be able to throw? How's that going to affect how quickly he can get up to speed? What kind of money do you make if you're not a first-round pick? Well, Bo Nix just showed you that you can make a ton of money by staying extra time in the college level, cash in, have a great experience, and then hopefully that puts you even more ready to jump in when the time comes, when your eligibility is gone. So I think you're seeing more and more quarterbacks do that. Quinn Ewers is another guy that faces the same choice and has the ability to make a ton of money playing one more year of college football. Can't blame those guys.
The Titans are not the only team in the NFL looking for a new general manager. The New York Jets are looking for a new general manager, and now the Las Vegas Raiders are looking for a new general manager. They have fired Tom Telesco after one season. So now there will be another GM opening, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of the Titans job versus some of these other jobs, but a third GM job opening, Tom Telesco fired by the Las Vegas Raiders. Perhaps Tom Brady has more sway over there than we think with his minority ownership stake. But, we'll see how the structures of those GM jobs are. We know how it's going to be over here. But, Willie, that's an interesting question when you think about just from the 10,000-foot view, the Jets, the Raiders, the Titans. And we're going to get more into this, as the search continues. Right. But just looking at those three jobs, I'm wondering which is the most appealing to potential GM candidates.
I may have a different perspective than some because I think it's easy to say, well, all three have volatile, questioned ownership
Yes.
at the top. I think it's pretty fair to say the Titans have the most recent run of consistent success, comparatively speaking, to the Raiders and the Jets
I would
over the
agree with
last
that.
10 or 15 years. It's not even close.
Well, the Jets haven't made the postseason in a decade and a half.
Since Rex Ryan was the coach.
Yes.
That's 2010, I think, would be the last time they even made the postseason.
Thereabouts.
And the Raiders, maybe played in 2 wild card games that I can remember over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
The Raiders have missed the playoffs in 7 of the past 8 years. They played in a wild card game in 2021.
Right. And lost, I think, to the Bengals in the first game. And that was the best.
They lost 26-19 to the Bengals in the wild card round.
So the Titans have much better success. So say what you will about the ownership currently. That's one thing to consider. The other thing that if I'm a GM, I think of John Robinson when he came to the Titans. They were down and out at the time. But what did they have? They had a quarterback in place in Marcus Mariota that at the time was clearly, he was the second pick in the draft. He had a decent rookie year. So you could look there and say, okay, I don't have to go searching for a quarterback because that's a tough thing to come in. Because if you don't get that, you're screwed. You're not going to make it. They had that. They had the left tackle in Lewan. They had a few other key pieces. And most importantly, they had the first pick. To me, that is why it's a mixed bag, because this Titans job right now, what can you be offered? Forget about all the politics and the Brinker factor and all that stuff. You have ground zero at quarterback. You have to go find that. You do have the first pick, but you also don't have a lot of pieces that you're building around. You got a couple. You think you've got the left tackle and Latham, you think. But you've got Jeffrey Simmons, who's aging, who hasn't had the full dominating all-star player of the year kind of level year in a while. So you're looking at what do I have to work with? How many holes do I have to fill? I haven't looked at the Jets or the Raiders roster as much. That would be really the answer for me. I wouldn't worry as much about the ownership as how much do I have to build and what is in place for me to build off of.
615-737-1025. We'll wrap up the show next. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next at the top of the hour. Chad Brinker made the rounds through the local news organizations after the news broke earlier this week that Rand Carthon had been fired. Chad Brinker, I should say, talked to Nick Suss of the Tennessean. He talked to Paul Kaharski. He talked to Teron Davenport. And, a lot of the quotes were the same. He certainly had talking points prepared. I guess I should give him a modicum of credit for actually addressing reporters. Now, we've talked a lot about Rand Carthon's lack of availability. Speaking of Teron Davenport, it certainly sounds as if though Teron Davenport made overtures to speak to Rand Carthon as Titans GM, and Rand was interested in speaking, and perhaps the organization didn't want that. I'll let Teron speak to that. I think he has spoken about it on our airwaves. But I'm reading these quotes. The first sentence of the first quote in the Tennessean article by Nick Suss from Chad Brinker is, "We're going to be a draft and develop organization." And Willie, what's the one thing you've constantly said about these Tennessee Titans these past couple of years, specifically last season?
That when Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon got there, they had gone through 3 consecutive drafts of getting nothing in return. And on top of that, had traded one of their best foundational pieces in A.J. Brown, who was entering into the prime of his career. So the cupboard was bare in terms of drafting, developing players. When you go through the list of those 3 years and your best player on that list is probably Roger McCreary, your best player. And then that doesn't even get into how badly they missed on the top picks in a lot of those cases. Not even on the team, never made a contribution. That's even different than being an average or even below average starter. That was woeful. So I think that's what we're getting at here.
I read that and I thought to myself, here's the full quote. And this is in the Nick Suss article in the Tennessean, but it's similar to the quotes that he gave to Paul Kaharski and Teron Davenport, among others. Quote, "We're going to be a draft and develop organization." What does that mean? Number one, we're going to build the core of our roster through the draft. We're going to be selective in free agency. We're going to put a premium on finding playmakers, those players that impact the outcomes of games. Premium players and premium positions with premium picks. Once we acquire those players, we've got to put an emphasis on development. Developing our young players means they've got to play, and you've got to live through some of those growing pains early and be willing to not only develop them on the field, but off the field. Number three, we've got to identify our best and retain our core performers. Draft, develop, retain. That's our vision. There's the key word, vision. This is a process that requires patience over panic. It requires discipline, disciplined people, disciplined action. So I read, and I heard Jared say this yesterday, and I couldn't agree more. Aren't all teams looking to do those things?
All 32 teams would tell you the same thing.
This is not unique to the Tennessee Titans. But this was my other thought. Oh, so now it's a rebuild. Now I see. That was what
I thought the same thing. I think last year they realized that they were going to inherit a ton of holes. Even if they had a good draft, they still weren't going to be able to cover everything. So they felt like they had to. And I heard Brian Callahan say this. We didn't necessarily want to go out and spend all that money in free agency. We had to, especially when they were moving on from the big chunks of their cap that were being taken up by an aging Ryan Tannehill, an aging Derrick Henry, who obviously wasn't aging that much, but he was getting paid a huge amount of money. That would have been tricky to bring him back, knowing where they were, and Kevin Byard, right? Just those three as an example. So they felt the necessity just to be any semblance of community. But I think that part of why he's saying that is because they want to make it clear that they're not going to do that every year. Nobody can survive it. They just proved it. That can't be the cake, is the free agents you go sign. Maybe it can in baseball because there's no salary cap. You can try it that way. It's not a great way to do it. But the free agents should be the icing on your cake and not the cake. The drafting and developing of your homegrown players has to be your cake to be successful.
And my question is, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit tomorrow with our wonderful listeners, if Rand Carthon had said these same exact things a year ago, or had been more upfront about it, the organization had been more upfront about where they were, how would your opinion change in all of this? Like, would this season? I mean, the season sucked. As watching it, we all know that.
Right.
I'm curious if, like, I know we use the example of Barry Trotz all the time, but Barry Trotz last season with the Predators set realistic expectations, and when things weren't going well, I didn't hear a lot of moaning and groaning from Predators fans. I'm wondering if the Titans would have done this a year ago and said, look, it's going to be a draft and develop situation, and they would have gone 3-14, would the anger have been dialed back a little bit? I'm curious about that. The fan anger,
I think
should say.
that where I stand on that. I think being upfront and realistic is the best way to go, rather than set the bar higher than you think you can make and then underwhelming with the results. So let's talk about that move by Brinker to do the individual interviews in print and not have the press conference. I would imagine when he brings in whoever he's going to bring in, and I do think he's probably at the top of the list of what the decision that's going to be made there of who is the next GM. I hope he's going to take the podium and answer a lot of these questions, but I didn't think it was a good look with the quotes. There's nothing wrong with the vision. That's basic football. That's basic GM talk. He could have easily been talking about hockey or baseball and basketball and said the same principles. I think everybody would nod their head. Yeah, that's how you build a good team. What I don't think went over well was he almost acted like this is a brand new day when they went to such great lengths a year ago, to talk about this infrastructure and this position that Chad Brinker was put in that was either equal or even, if you want to interpret it, higher up than Rand Carthon. And they went to great lengths, and Mike Keith was conducting the official podcast where they talked about in detail the infrastructure. I'm bringing in analytics people. We have to analyze the cap. I'm a scout, but I also work the cap. I'm going to do all of these things to set the table. Rand is going to be the guy that goes and finds the talent. That was in place last year, right? I think the same structure is in place with him there. It's just that the Rand Carthon is out. Is that how doesn't that a little puzzling to you? Like, he's been there.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it doesn't seem like he's taking some of the responsibility for why it flopped this year. When I think you could probably answer those questions if he were asked. Like, hey, look, we thought we had the quarterback. And you got to be careful because the quarterback is still on the team. So as long as Will Levis is going to be on the team, you got to be careful because you can't write him off 100%. But you thought Will Levis would be better than he was. Not only was he not as good, he flopped. That's a big reason why they're 3-14. So I think he should defend his position while all this was going on, rather than say, hey, we're turning over a new leaf, and here's my vision of what's coming forward. He already had done that and had been on the record talking about that. So that wasn't news to me. I want to hear what his perspective was as it was crumbling and floundering this year. Does that make sense?
Yes. I do want to take a quick minute before our show ends. We didn't touch on this. It was announced earlier today by the family of Frank Wycheck that Frank Wycheck suffered from CTE. Frank died in December of 2023 at the age of 52. He had CTE stage 3. Stage 4 is the most severe diagnosis. So that announcement today from the family of Frank Wycheck, he did have stage 3 CTE when he died in December of 2023.
Just I've got a unique perspective on this, just knowing Frank and his family really well. It's obviously been out there for a while and Frank was public about it. He wanted to have his brain researched when he did pass, and he passed way too soon for all of us. But I think a lot of people feel like that is very newsworthy for sure. And I think a lot of us, especially in light of what we have learned about CTE with other players, we're certainly thinking that this was a possibility, if not a probability, for where it's gone. But either way, I know how hard it's been on the family. I do know that firsthand. So the strength and courage to share that, I think is just that, very brave.
His daughter, Deanna, said in a statement, "Our family is grateful to learn of his confirmed CTE diagnosis and hopes to continue our father's desire to bring awareness, increased intervention, education, and support for NFL alumni and their families related to CTE." So that news came out today. Of course, the big news of the day in Titans world, Mike Keith, no longer the voice of the Tennessee Titans, off to the University of Tennessee to be the voice of the Volunteers football and basketball programs. But that'll do it for us today. We will be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow. It's going to snow, everybody. You may be snowed in, but we're going to bring you the entertainment to keep you warm and occupied. Make sure you have all of your necessities. 4 to 7 inches of snow, I think, which around here can snarl a lot of things.
I hope prep work, guys. I hope and look, salute to all the people who drive the trucks,
Yes.
put the salt down. I know they're going to be busy. The good thing is we've known this is coming for a few days, so I'm hoping they're ready for it and we can continue to manage our day because we got to do a show tomorrow, Adam. We got Predators hockey on Saturday. We got a lot of stuff going on.
We will be on the air by hook or by crook. We're like the post office. Rain, sleet. I don't remember what the thing is, but you know what I mean. Stillman and Company is coming up next. And on behalf of Derek, I will say, be loved. Love on your people. Have a wonderful Thursday. Peace.